Mike, you want to sort of jump in here?
Okay, sure, yeah. Well, again, with the risk of repeating, and I won't risk repeating a lot of what's all been said because I guess it would be simply doing that. But I guess one point is I do agree with Peter that, if you had the benefit of starting again, you would be adopting the hierarchy of control. You would design out all the fall hazards right from the beginning, and therefore you wouldn't have this issue. I guess where we find ourselves, though, is that we're trying to shut the gate after the horse has already bolted, and we've actually got a lot of in non-conformance installations around the place. So therefore, we have to find a way to, I guess, address that in as quick a way as possible. And in essence, I agree with where Carl is coming from. Some form of accreditation, licensing, refresher training program, because I think it's I just think that's important from a development point of view, and I think if you had that framework, you would relatively quickly, and when I talk about relatively quickly, I mean this is going to take a few years to address, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to start now, as far as I can see it.
Dimitri, I'll get you to jump in. Not as obviously you can't bind work cover when we're not talking about where work cover is going, but I mean, are some of those comments sort of valid, and is that something that should be on the policy agenda going forward?
Okay, well, I suppose the prescriptiveness of the legislation, I suppose historically it was more prescriptive, meaning it detailed how businesses should undertake their work. Over time, this has eliminated. I'm just saying what's happened historically. Currently, the whole framework of the legislation is based around what is reasonably practicable. That's the reality of the legislation at this stage. WorkCover I suppose, administers the current legislation. So, in the aspect of licensing, a person holding a licence in itself is not the demonstration of competency. We've known historically that licence holders are not necessarily competent in the activity they're doing or the plant that they're operating. So if you hold a licence, you might have achieved that licence through some training, yes, but are they actually familiar with the work on that specific plant? Have they received training on that particular anchorage system? So, saying that, our point of view would be, irrespective of whether there's a licensing framework, there is a mandatory requirement that the worker installing a system and the worker using the system has to receive or must receive some training, information, instruction. It's what I said right up front. Now, the Australian standard is the minimum level of safety. It's mandated, I suppose, in terms of prescribing that minimum level, but it also, being a code, well, being called up in a code, there's options for businesses to choose to use other types of risk control measures that are the equivalent as per that particular code of practice or Australian standard. So, without stifling business, Australian standards are there to provide practical guidance, but it's also there, well, if you come up with an innovative method of addressing the risk, well, that's fine. You can go down that track as long as it provides, and you can demonstrate it provides the minimum level of safety of that Australian standard. From an inspector's point of view, we are guided by those particular standards. Those standards actually have a regime of certification in it. Granted, it doesn't say it must be independently certified, but it does nevertheless say the Australian standard we're talking about does reference that there has to be some certification upon installation. That's one. Now, when you install an anchor or any other type of plant in a structure, obviously you need to consider the structural adequacy of the thing that you're installing in. So there has to be a further assessment of how does this particular anchorage system relate to the structure. So this is where you need to, I suppose, take advice from technical experts. Technical experts in the Australian Standard for Anchorage relates to, I suppose, qualified engineers or other people such as height safety supervisors who have received the actual training. The Australian Standard actually prescribes a way or outlines a way of meeting your training obligations. So from our point of view, there is adequate regulation. We do, when we go on site, ask the relevant questions. Whether there's a need for more practical advice, I think there is, definitely. And we will assist in providing that practical advice to business.
Okay, thanks for that that response. In terms of just before we move off the regulation sort of topic, Dimitri, if for example, hearing what some of the panel members have said, if for example WAHA decides to adopt a self-regulation model of accreditation or develop its own standard of competence and licensing, would that be looked upon favourably by the regulators?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like other associations have done similar types of, I suppose, in inverted commas, accreditation for their for the people that have gone through their training. Yes, we would look at it favourably. However, we wouldn't be providing advice that that it's a mandatory requirement that they do that particular training. The requirement would be they need to do the training. Who provides that training? Well, that's open to the open.
I mean, so I suppose it goes to the duty of care and what the expectations would be if you create a credible industry standard that's accredited and stacks up, then that would assist. I might not open it up to questions, and just remember my threat around the Socratic method. I've got a one taker down the back. If you can just state your name before you ask the question.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I've got a question for the WorkCover representative. Given that falls from heights are a leading cause of fatalities, and given the very strong industry interest in this topic, WorkCover can decide to do intervention blitzes on various hazards. For example, we had an inspector come to our workplace recently on elevated work platforms. Given the survey findings from WAHA, what is to stop WorkCover now doing an intervention blitz on height safety installations, knowing that this is such a problem?
Okay, well, there's nothing stopping us from doing it now, apart from, I suppose, planning for it and doing a proper intervention campaign. However, we are got in place a lot of campaigns relating to falls. The risk of falling, and one in particular that we're about to start it relates to a focus on house construction. We found through our statistics that that particular sector of the construction industry has the most injuries and incidents relating to falls. So we are actually planning on doing that. In terms of providing further intervention activities, I suppose it comes down to our, I suppose, a focus and I suppose planning for it. So yes, we will be planning on doing that. I can't say that we'll do it immediately. That's the only thing. We are driven by our, I suppose, incidents, our statistics, industry, and we need to plan for the following year, and we'll probably do something. Yes.
Thank you for that question.
Hello, my name's Lance Jenkins. I'm from a small electrical firm at Unanderra. I notice the focus on all this is that the business or the homeowner is responsible to provide this safe system of work. The problem is when the job that has to be done, the fall prevention costs 3 times more than what they're going to get from the job. So you've got this push-pull thing. Now, at the risk of getting political, shouldn't there be some incentive, and I know there's the policing action, but there should be some incentive from government to support businesses in providing adequate fall prevention. And straight away, through statistics or whatever, they're going to see if governments are interested in saving lives, then this would have to be much better than a pink bat scheme or unused halls in schools. I mean, this focus on small business, especially in the climate we're in, to come up with these costly, can't tell me they're not, and none of you can tell me that I've got two of my members of my family work in building. There's no such thing as a skyhook yet, even though out there in the thing I saw a little crane there that's got skyhook written on it. And they construct roofs, right? So tell me if I'm wrong, in putting up the purlings and I'm not a builder, I'm a fitter, but my brother is, my son-in-law is, there's nothing that helps them. If they fall when they're standing those trusses, they can't be prosecuted. It's the tilers and everybody else. So I just think that there should be some incentive that goes to government that allows small businesses and everybody to claim on tax or whatever to get some of this back.